Hello and welcome to the second episode of Creeping Up the Candle. Today we are going to move on from our beginnings to have a think about what we wear. Last week we were thinking about who we were and what we were called and how we presented ourselves to the parish. A lot of that is to do with the clothes that we wear. So that is the topic that we're going to be exploring. But before we do that, before I forget as usual, John, the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
How are you doing, John?
I'm fine, thank you, Mary. And thank you for all of you listening on the other end of this podcast. We have received very positive feedback from our first episode of Creeping Up the Candle. And some of the people were asking, why is this podcast called Creeping Up the Candle? It does sound a bit creepy, does it? And a bit strange. Especially for those who might not be used to the churchy language. So, Mary, could we tell our listeners why have we chosen this name?
Yeah, I think creeping is to do with moving slowly up the candle. And there's an expression in the Church of England which is, how far up the candle are you? The Church of England is a broad church. You can wander into a Church of England church and find yourself in anything that is very close to a Catholic service with people in vestments, robed choirs, incense, and there's a broad spectrum going to the other end where people might not even robe for services, more likely to use worship music. There's all sorts of things you could encounter when you come across an Anglican church. And of course it's not a straight line, is it?
No.
But the question, creeping up the candle, it comes from the phrase, how high up the candle are you? How far up the candle do you reckon we are, John?
Fairly high up, not the top, but fairly high.
No one's ever at the top.
No one's ever at the top.
I think we're on the fiery bit. So I've come from a more middle of the road Anglican experience, and I'm very slowly going up the candle. I think you probably agree my progress is creeping rather than jumping.
No, you're doing a very good progress, and it's good that you have come to the bright side of the force.
Oh!
And we welcome you for that, absolutely.
So we started the podcast in an attempt to think about what it was like for people who found themselves in a more Catholic context and were creeping up the candle in the same way I am.
So hopefully this podcast will be a way to reflect and to learn together and discuss the ways in which it makes to go up the candle.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So to business. Today we are thinking about what we wear. When I first started talking about ordination, I was chatting to the kids about it, and one of them said, okay, you can get ordained, but you're not wearing one of those copes to my parents' evening. Which I think, as an interesting point, there's a very different field between what we wear as our uniform, everyday life, and what we wear in church for the liturgy. And especially as we are so high up the candle, what we wear in church is quite specific, and there's a lot of meaning behind it. But first, dog collars are probably the most recognisable part of clothing that we associate with vicars. Why? Why are we wandering around with these little collars on our necks?
I think we need to go back really and see what was the traditional clergy wear for the Roman Catholic Church, which was the cassock. And for many centuries, Roman Catholic clergy would wear cassocks. The cassock is the long black tunic that we wear still today in the Church of England. Traditionally in the Roman Church, this is black, that represents humility. Right. Of course, it was the cheaper fabric as well, but it represents the priestly order and the humility of the service that it is to be a priest. The Catholic cassock has 33 buttons representing the 33 years of Christ. In the Anglican Church, we have 39 buttons representing the 39 articles of religion in the Book of Common Prayer.
Right.
It was later on in the Reformation when the Anglican clergy, in order to differentiate from the Roman Catholic clergy, they took off the cassocks and they would wear what was known as the dog collar. At the time, it was a white neck scarf and white tie, as it were, with still black dress, but it will be street dress, so it will be jacket and pantaloon.
Yeah, so it was the same as everybody else was wearing, but just in black. In the same way
right.
that the cassock was black, but everyone else was wandering around with blues and greens and all sorts of lovely colours.
And this is the reason how the white collar has evolved throughout the years. Of course, the Roman Catholic Church, after the Second Vatican Council, also kind of remove in some part the cassock, and they adopted what it was known as the Protestant collar, which is the dog collar. Which, as a foreigner, being born and brought up in Spain, I always thought that it was a rather strange name, the dog collar. We know it as clergy collar.
Yeah.
Why? Why is it called a dog collar?
Good old English sense of humour, I think, isn't it? Isn't it too, yes, very self-deprecating. No, it's only a dog collar. I don't know, I guess it was a nickname that was given and it stuck. But I find that fascinating because I'd always thought the dog collar was what people in the more Catholic end of the church wore, and towards the more the other end of the church, people would nowadays not bother with a dog collar or possibly go for a coloured shirt. So that's a really interesting skip that I hadn't twigged, that what we're doing now is to differentiate us from the Catholic Church originally. But it certainly makes us recognisable about the place, doesn't it?
And it is important because it's not just a uniform. It tells us of who we are, deacons, priests, clergy, serving God and God's people where we are. And I think it is really important that we are visible and that the collar tells you who we are, that we are there to serve them. And it is not a way in which we seek privilege or honour, but to serve.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people associate dog collars with people who maybe were looking for power or whatever, so it's really important for us who wear the dog collar now not to behave like that, really, isn't it?
And it's a reminder when you put the dog collar that yes, you are set apart to serve God and God's people in humility.
Yes, not in a we're no better or worse than anyone else, but just we have a different job to do.
Absolutely.
Fab. So I have to say I'm a convert to black since being here. One of the other options for dog collars is people wear their own clothes and then you get like a little bib with a dog collar on. And I honestly thought before I came here, no, I've been called as I am and I'm not changing for anyone. Although when I first met you, it was quite clear that the church was used to people wearing black. So my plan was I would come, wear black, get on with it. But I really like it now.
If you remember in your letters in the curacy, one of, not requirements, but suggestions, it was that you would be wearing black.
Yes, I remember you saying you wouldn't dream of telling me what to wear. No. But. And it's easier as well, isn't it? You know what you're going to be wearing, you're recognisable. And I like it. I mean, I think it goes back to what we said at the beginning, doesn't it? It's not better or worse ways of doing this. It's just how things are done at St Paul's. And
each clergy will have their different styles. You have the tunnel variety of collar. I have the ring of confidence, the full collar, full white collar.
So it goes all the way around
my neck.
Yes, I love ring of confidence as a phrase.
Yes.
Although I'm still mindful that for some people it can be a barrier. For a lot of people it's an invitation to come and talk to us, but for people who've had bad experiences of the church or of priests, sometimes wearing the dog collar can be a bit off-putting. So I think we're both aware that when we're dealing with people in our dog collars, they'll be bringing a lot to the interaction just based on what we look like. But it's not all black and white, is it? We get plenty of colours, liturgical bling.
Plenty to choose from, really, isn't it? For the different liturgical seasons, we have different colours, and we can talk about those if you want. We have white or gold for times like Christmas, Easter, or when we commemorate the feasts of our Lord or a saint. We have red, that's to commemorate the Holy Spirit or a martyr, the blood of the martyrs. We have purple, and that's normally linked to penitential times such as Lent, Advent, also used for funerals. And there's from the purple the rose colour or rosé.
Pink vestments.
The pink vestments, yes. They are not pink though. They are not pink. They are rose.
They're rose.
This is used on the third Sunday of Advent, Gaudete, and the fourth Sunday of Lent. We also have green colours for the vestments, and the green is the colour used during the season, during the year. So ordinary time, as it's called in the church. So that's normally the time in between Easter to Advent and so on. Ordinary time, and then finally two more colours that are not really used as much.
Yeah.
Black, and that's used normally for funerals or for requiem masses. That's mass for the faithful departed, and it could be used on the 2nd of November, which is All Souls. And finally blue. I believe we have blue.
We haven't got blue, have we?
Blue is the colour, liturgical colour, dedicated to Our Lady, to the Blessed Virgin Mary. So you can wear blue vestments on the feasts of Our Lady.
I didn't know that.
Such as the 8th of September, the birth of Our Lady, the 15th of August, the Assumption of Our Lady, or the 8th of December, which is the Immaculate Conception.
Excellent. So I hadn't even come across black vestments before I got here, and we've got funky tassels on our black vestments.
Yes.
They were good fun.
That's for the dalmatics.
Oh, yeah, we'll come on to that in a minute.
And
so
there's lots of colours to talk about the different seasons, and we'll talk about the different vestments. And each vestment has a reason. I mean, we don't wear all these vestments as a drag show or a fashion show. Each vestment has a reason and a purpose.
Yes, I'm not sure everybody would believe you at the fashion show, but no. So just as the black shirt and the white dog collar are our uniform for out and about, each of the vestments has a reason, and it tells you which role that you're playing in the service. So where shall we start? Well, the alb, I suppose, is alba, meaning white, is basically the backdrop for all of the other vestments.
Let's start from the beginning. What do we wear underneath?
So yeah, basically the white bit. Some people, before they begin their curacies, are full of, do I need a cassock alb? That's the ones at the hood. Do I need an ordinary alb? And the answer to that would be, depends which church you're going to, doesn't it?
It depends on your own taste. What do you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, yes.
You have a cassock alb.
I do.
I have a traditional alb with amis. The amis is a piece of white cloth that you put around your neck, and this is not to make sure you don't soil the vestments.
I didn't know that. I thought you just put it on for... I never thought about it.
There is a reason for each of the vestments.
Whereas I have a cassock alb because it's easy and all in one. So, yes, to begin with then, we end up with a white background of whichever alb we have, and on top of that goes the stole, which is the scarfy bit, which is meant to be a symbol that we're yoked to Christ. And obviously when you put yours on, there's a cross at the back of every stole, you always kiss it.
Yes.
Why do you do that?
That is a reminder of, the stole reminds you of your priestly ordination. So you kiss the stole in the same way that we kiss the altar.
Yeah.
When we begin the service in recognition of Christ, you kiss the stole as a reminder and love of your calling to the priesthood.
You see, that's not something I've ever tried. I'm going to try it and report back.
And of course, if you are a priest, you wear the stole hanging like a scarf. If you are a deacon, you wear it. How do you wear your stole?
I wear it like a sash over my left shoulder. Some stoles have got like little tie bits that hold it together. Other times we just do it in a knot. And I know some people always do that because they don't want to ruin the stoles, because they can be beautifully embroidered and so on. So that's my stole. Random question that we didn't rehearse. If I'm ordained and being the deacon in the liturgy, do I wear it as a deacon? Or do I wear it as a...
You would wear it as a deacon, because if you are acting in the liturgy as a deacon, you would wear it deacon-wise.
Right, so
like you do.
So a cross stole isn't a sign that you're a first year, like L plates. It's actually This is
the way in which deacons wear the stole.
Cool. Well, there we go. We've all learnt something today. And at my sending church, that's where it would stop for a deacon. You'd have an alb and a stole. But here we have a little coat thing called a dalmatic, which has got sleeves. I spent a lot of our early days caught up in the sleeves. John was floating around putting his on beautifully, and I was like, see out.
It's a matter of practice. It's a matter of practice. You will get used to it. Now, the dalmatic resembles a chasuble, but of course, as you said, has the sleeves.
Yeah.
And there's a dalmatic that is for deacons, and there's the tunic, which is for sub-deacons when you have the high mass set. And then the tunic is where for the subdeacon wears the tunic, which normally has one line in the vestment, and the dalmatic always has 2 lines.
Right, so that is, you're the deacon if you're wearing that. And I should probably say that's not something that priests have to buy before you get started. The church owns all of these things, and we just... So John and I match most Sundays. I wear the dalmatic, John wears the chasuble.
If you are lucky enough to be in a church that has a lot of high mass vestments,
Dressing up box,
you will have the dalmatic, the chasuble, and the tunic matching.
So the chasuble, that's your thing?
Each vestment represents the state and the role within the liturgy. So the chasuble is the top vestment that the priest wears, and again that's the yoke, the gentle yoke of Christ, and is a seamless piece of clothing like the one Christ wore or was stripped on the crucifixion. And again with the liturgical colour, that represents the priestly vestment, and that's when we are in the liturgy, the priest represents Christ. That is the vestment that represents the dignity of the priesthood. There's also the cope.
Oh yes, that's a different... That's more of a... I want to say curtains.
It is hardly. It's like a cape, and that's normally used for the priest again or the deacon in processions and so on.
So we only wore copes at Christmas, I think, so far.
So it will be normally choral services, processions. We will wear one on Palm Sunday.
Right. And of course, all of that is on top of a pair of plain black shoes.
Most of the time, Mari, most of the time. Now, we've talked about the vestments, we've talked about our streetwear as clergy and the role of that. And it is quite interesting that since Mary has arrived, the eccentric use of liturgical shoes has been introduced to the church. But again, that's nothing new, Mary, because in the past there used to be liturgical slippers, altar or sanctuary slippers, and they used to be liturgical colour coordinated.
See, I'm just naturally a high church person. I never knew it before. So, so the deal is black shoes in the sanctuary. I think I started with black shoes with a few flowers on.
And then we moved on to more flowery shoes.
But it was really interesting, actually, the reception from... you and the congregation. I think I was preaching the first time I wore the flowery shoes, and I had more comments about the shoes than the sermon. But it's interesting, isn't it? As long as we keep the symbolism correct, we can still have a bit of fun with the rest of it. At the moment, obviously, I'm out of flowery shoes because it's Lent, so I've got my purple ones. And I do believe you're enjoying it too.
Well... I was very impressed with myself when I was brave enough to wear Christmas shoes for Christmas Day, for the Mass on Christmas Day.
I was very impressed. I started off teasing you about wearing funky shoes like mine, and then you actually did. It's very surprising. But it was fun.
It was fun, but it's not going to happen very often.
So, it's probably about time for us to go. I mentioned in passing that at the time of recording we are in Lent, which means we're gearing up for the Holy Week and Easter, which I think is going to be very different here from anything I've ever experienced.
Absolutely, and I think it will be very good to reflect together about your experience of Holy Week, Easter, and living the Triduum in a more Catholic parish.
So, folks, that is the plan for next time. We're going to talk about what it was like in Holy Week with all the different liturgies from that. I should add that we've got one more thing to add. We've got a new email address, creepingupthecandle@gmail.com. Seems nobody else has ever crept up the candle with an email address.
If you would like to send your feedback, comments, or topics that you would like us to discuss together,
absolutely,
we would be delighted to hear from you, and we'll be replying all the emails that come along.
Will we? One of us will.
One of us will. The curate will.
Yeah, naturally. So I think all that remains to say is thank you very much for listening to our second podcast. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creeping Up the Candle. We hope you enjoyed it. If so, please follow us, and we'll be back with another episode very soon. And last but by no means least, thank you so much to Kevin and Estelle Holland for providing the music.